At a time when railway stations all over the world are falling into disrepair and neglect, how nice it is to see that this great terminal, Sydney Central Station, has been given a new lease of life. The stone and bricks scrubbed clean, the floors polished, paintwork newly applied. The place is grand enough to hold a ball in, as in fact they sometimes do. The foundation stone for this building was laid in 1903, and the design of the building reflects the imperial Victorian attitudes of the time, and reflects too the hopes that they had for this huge railway system that was then well on the way to developing. From the archives of ABC television, we've drawn some stories, some films about railways. Not all of them as grand as this, but reflecting the huge diversity of Australian trains and Australian railways. First to Tasmania. Possibly in Tasmania, the railways have declined more than in any other state. But thanks to enthusiasts, some of the tracks, some of the trains are rolling on. We go to the Don River Railway near Devonport, Tasmania.
For almost a century, steam was part of the landscape in Australia. The old railways helped open the country, and they gave cheap and reliable transport for farmers and townspeople, as well as for their goods and produce. Today, the Don River Tramway near Devonport is putting steam back into the landscape for both pleasure and amusement. The workaday and dirty steam locomotive has become a glistening, gleaming curiosity, which is still setting the hearts of boys afire. Train travel in Tasmania these days is confined to this railway alone. The Van Diemen Light Railway Society operates it as a tourist attraction. But among the Society's members, there are some with other memories of steam, of the hard and dirty work on the footplate, the days before diesel engines. 50 years of steam is fresh in the memory of driver Cess Lowe.
Companionship, steam was the best, but as soon as you change on diesel, you start to lose that part and get on to automatic part.
What do you mean, companionship?
Oh, it's like your wife and family in the home, like where your fireman is more or less, you know, part of your family. You know, as far as railway life's concerned, you live with him and eat with him, cook and, you know, and view each other's judgments and that.
Those 50 years that you had with steam, were they good years?
I would say there was. I was fortunate in a lot of ways. Could have been hurt, but there you are. I was one of the fortunate ones.
Fortunate in what way?
Oh, accidents and things like that, you know. Come off the line and touch the pile on top of you, but you don't get hurt, so, you know, you consider yourself fortunate.
The existence of this preserved branch is a tribute to the enthusiasts who fought to have it restored. But this old engine, built in England as long ago as 1902, owes its existence to a series of apparently unrelated events. The engine's design is even older, but its survival was almost an accident. Society member David Hutchinson.
It was a goods engine, really, not a passenger engine. And one of the places it did work was on this line, which originally ran to Melrose. And she worked on this line for many years. It was withdrawn from service, I think, about 1960-ish. And then it was restored by the railways for the centenary in 1971. So this is how it managed to survive, being cut up. And then the railways used to hire it to us down here for a year or two. And then last year they donated it to us. So it survived because it was chosen as a centenary engine in 1971.
Well, it's now 77 years old. How does she compare now to when she was first built?
Well, I have no idea, not being here, but as long as it's looked after, it should have a number of years' work. The boiler inspector said it's got about 20 years' work in the boiler before we'd have to look at a new boiler. And so if we look after it, it should be going for quite a long time. Yes.
Now, the Van Diemen Light Railway Society has its steam engine, its carriages, its line, and its growing crowd of customers, as well as its spreading fame. To reach this happy stage took nearly 10 years of hard work. David Hutchinson.
Well, like a lot of things, it evolved in a peculiar way. A few fellows just got together and we happened to buy a little engine that's over in the shed over there. And having got the engine, we had to look for somewhere to run it. And at the same time, the railways were getting rid of a lot of steam stuff. And we looked about all 50 or 60 different sites, but eventually we settled on this one at Devonport, and the Devonport Council helped us a lot, and the government have given us some help. We run it because we like doing it. Other people seem to enjoy coming on. It obviously has some tourist interest, and the tourist department are interested in it. But they're prepared to give us quite a lot of help.
People riding on it, what do they get out of it?
I don't know. I suppose it's... I mean, a steam loco is a novelty nowadays. Like all things, once they cease to be commonplace, people become interested in sailing ships is another example. People just like to go for a ride on a train, which is really quite a novelty these days. It's quite an attractive little trip. We've only got 2.5 miles of line at the moment. We hope to extend a little bit more at the far end so that the trip actually ends up on a beach. That's one of the projects. One day we would like to go to Melrose, which is another 4 miles, where the track originally used to go to. In fact, it originally went to Upper Barrington a few more miles further on, but it worked to Melrose from an old quarry for many years, and now there's a big caravan park up there. We'd like to get up there.
What about the response from the people, particularly the kids?
Oh, well, kids love it. And, we get a good roll-up from the public, and we managed to cover all our running expenses and the expenses of restoration. The only money we're short on is big piles of money, say, for big capital works like new shedding and such like. But we get a good response, and we have had over 40,000 passengers on the line so far.
The train is rather grandly known as the Gulflander. It runs between Normanton and Croydon in northwest Queensland. The locals have a less flattering name for it. They call it the Mad 90 because it runs over 90 miles of the most eccentric track in the country. At 8:30 every Wednesday morning, the Gulflander chugs out of Normanton. Some 4 hours later, it arrives at Croydon. At 8:30 every Thursday, it comes back again. This story is from Martin Goddard.
This is the Normanton railway station. Normanton is a long way from almost everywhere. It's in the Gulf country, a little way inland from the southeast corner of the Gulf of Carpentaria. In the 1880s, some Queensland politicians thought it would be a good idea to have a railway line from Cloncurry, further south, up to the Gulf. In 1888, work was begun in appallingly difficult conditions. There's almost no decent timber in this area, so this track rests on special patented steel sleepers. And just after work started at Normanton, the politicians changed their minds. It was one of those disastrous policy decisions which wreaks havoc down the years. The politicians decided that instead of taking the line to Cloncurry, where it would join the rest of the Queensland state network, they'd take it to the gold town of Croydon, 90 miles away. They built a rail line which was totally isolated. You can't get to Normanton or Croydon by train, unless you start, of course, from Croydon or Normanton. For a while, this strange little railway boomed, but the gold eventually ran out, as it always does, and the service was gradually reduced. By 1929, only one train a week was needed to handle the business. The outlandish-looking rail motor, which eventually replaced the locomotive, can carry 18 people. Charlie Honey is the man in charge. He has quite a job. He's not only the driver, but the mechanic, maintenance supervisor, accountant, ticket seller, station master and cleaner. When a rail motor breaks down to such an extent that Charlie Honey can't fix it, there isn't much to be done except leave it where it is. About 3 years ago, the Queensland Cabinet decided to keep the Normanton to Croydon line open. The cost was $20,000 a year. The government made the reprieve partly because the people of the two outback townships need the line, particularly when flood rains cut roads for months at a time. But there was also sentiment involved for what's officially called Australia's most isolated government railway line.
Mick Gleeson is station master at only a very small spot on the railways map of New South Wales, Telegraph Point on the north coast. But it seems his thinking is years ahead of the state's Public Transport Commission. Last week, the Commission announced a major renovation program to make railway stations more attractive. Station master Gleeson already has one of the state's most attractive. He spent 13 years establishing a station garden that's won dozens of prizes. The Transport Commission said it wanted stations to be pleasant places for people to wait for trains. Telegraph Point is certainly that. And although these days not many trains stop there and few district people use them, the station does attract visitors. They even come on guided tours to gaze upon an extraordinary range of plants in neat gardens or potted in brightly painted pieces of truck and tractor tyres. Station Master Gleeson attributes the splendid year-round display to frost-free temperate weather and to truckloads of manure from local dairy farms. Telegraph Point was judged the state's champion station garden for 5 years, and the walls of the station master's office are plastered with awards. Reporter Jim Revitt talked with Mick Gleeson about gardening on the railway.
Mick, what inspired you to start this magnificent garden?
It was very dilapidated when I came here, and had one good offsider to give me a hand, started off.
How did you acquire all the variety of plants that you have?
The elkhorns and the staghorns and the ferns, we got them ourselves out of the forest, and then we started a garden.
Had you had much experience at this sort of thing before?
Not a great deal, no.
How did you acquire all your knowledge?
Mostly reading the Sunday papers with the clippings out of it or whatnot.
Do many visitors ask for cuttings when they come and have a look?
Yes, quite a few, yeah.
And do you give them to them?
When I can, yeah.
Do you garden for competition prizes or for the love of it?
No, we don't bother much about competition at all now.
Why?
It's more or less of a hobby.
And who does the gardening at home?
The wife, mostly. I have enough of it here.
Telegraph Point consists of the station and a scatter of houses along one side of the Pacific Highway. The station is the town's modest claim to fame. Although freight and passenger traffic doesn't stop often at Telegraph Point, the station staff have a busy time between watering and weeding. On some days, up to 40 trains pass through, and this causes plenty of work in the signal box. The Public Transport Commission has not yet decided on the details of its plans to remodel railway stations. The Commission says it will try first to determine what the customers want. Judging by the reaction of travellers to Telegraph Point, perhaps what's required at dreary stations under review is a better standard of gardening.
The North Queensland city of Cairns has become known the world over as the destination for jet-setting tourists, all keen to see the Great Barrier Reef, and some wanting to test their mettle against big game fish. Others just want to relax and perhaps absorb a little of the region's fascinating history. A history that embraces gold fields and explorers and pioneers of great courage who've left some outstanding legacies. One of the hinterland's major attractions is an engineering achievement that still amazes locals and visitors alike, the Kuranda Range Railway. If trains have a magic all of their own, it probably explains why old trains, such as this one, can still entrance a seemingly endless parade of people of all generations and nationalities. In search of tropical adventure, the dramatic and the spectacular, few are disappointed. But then it's not just the train that draws the curious, it's the journey itself. A century ago, this line was still on the drawing board. Explorers have been sent into the rugged rainforest-covered hinterland at several points along the coast to find a way up to the Atherton tableland to serve a number of promising mining ventures. All the routes looked difficult and expensive, but the one the Queensland authorities finally decided on went from Cairns up the mountains to Kuranda. Even the line from Cairns across the coastal plain to the foot of the mountains saw two contracting companies throw in the towel. There were just too many problems. When the Queensland government had completed this section by itself, a contract was let in 1887 to an enterprising engineer from Melbourne called John Robb, and work began on the legendary Mountain Railway. It was to snake for 25 kilometres, climbing ever upwards and carving into the steep sides of the gorge. With no less than 15 tunnels, 98 curves, and dozens of difficult bridges over ravines and waterfalls. In time, there will also be a huge cost in human life. The workers on the Kuranda line, mainly Irish and Italian, struggled against the stubborn mountain with shovels, manual drills, dynamite, buckets, bare hands, and immense courage. The heavy tropical rains tore unmercifully at their naked project, and landslides were common. At one stage, 1,500 men toiled in the tropical heat, their hardship reading like a litany of torture. Malaria, scrub typhus, dysentery, snake bites, and scrub ticks. Accidents took their toll as well. More than 20 deaths were recorded in the last 4 years of the 1880s, but many others went unrecorded. Many were caused by premature explosions. By the time the line had reached tunnel number 13, it was well up into the high part of the Kuranda Range. Here on the 24th of September, 1888, 3 construction workers died together in a fall of earth. In the same tunnel, on the same day, 7 others were injured by a premature explosion. But the Demon Project was not without its lighter moments. By April 1870, with the Stony Creek Bridge almost completed on a full curve high above the gorge, the project was paid a vice-regal visit by the Governor of Queensland, General Sir Henry Wiley Norman. To His Excellency's surprise, he found a full banquet had been prepared on the bridge, with tables, food, wine, and a protective roof. History records there were no speeches because of the roar of the waterfall. The early explorers who located and marked out the route for the railway had spoken of a huge cataract at the top of the gorge. It was later named the Barren Falls. Today, a hydroelectric scheme deprives the Barren Falls of much of its water. But every day, some of the water is released so that visitors can see something of what nature intended. For visitors making the journey today in specially restored carriages, some of them older than the line itself, the end of the journey is the serene and colourful Kuranda station.
There will be one train departing for Kansas Lake. Before we departing from platform 12 noon.
The spirit of the early days lives on in this quiet mountain town. A short walk, or more time-honoured ride, will reveal a town very much aware of the history of the Cairns to Kuranda Railway. Markets in the old style flourish, selling products made from the jungle, which was so often the enemy of the railway navvies. In their thousands, the visitors continue to come, sometimes in 2 or 3 trains a day. And they'll probably continue to make this special journey as a sort of imaginative pilgrimage, as long as feats of human courage and harsh tropical beauty are able to stir the soul. On the 3rd day of the Rail Fans Festival, the M-Class steam engine hauled 130 rail enthusiasts through the lush country of northwest Tasmania. The steam train tour of Tasmania is to last 9 days, and it was booked out a month ago. The tour was organised jointly by the Tasmanian Government Railways, Ansett Airlines, and the Australian Railways Historical Society. It takes in every section of the state's railways and will cover more than 500 miles. Not all the enthusiasts are riding in the train. All round Tasmania, the tour is being followed by train enthusiasts who are photographing the engine at every opportunity. The Rail Fans Festival is the first organised in Tasmania, and it's attracted visitors from all over Australia and as far away as Britain. The steam loco was built more than 70 years ago. It was restored for the Tasmanian Railway centenary last year. The rail fans travel south to Hobart today. Tomorrow they'll take off to the Florentine Valley through the scenic Derwent Valley.
Since the mid-1920s, an odd little rail motor like this has been taking the mail to several small towns in the Mallee district of Victoria. It's known locally as the Mail, or more often, the Trike. But now, the Trike has made its last mail run, and will no longer rendezvous at Pie Angle with the passenger rail motor from Swan Hill. The Trike was named after the original rail motor, a 3-wheeled ganger's trolley with a small cabin. Even though Bill Roberts is employed as a railway ganger, he was also the driver of the Trike for its last 32 years on the delivery run. But driving was a part-time job. The Trike operated only twice a week, Mondays and Fridays.
There were once 29 such services in Victoria, and they were essential when roads were poor and often impassable in bad weather. For the last 20 years, the only one still going was the trike. It could cover the outward journey of 16 miles in 70 minutes. The first of 2 scheduled stops was at Natia, one of the places dependent on the trike. The little rail motor run by the railways, but paid for by the Postal Department, has been replaced by a road service, and local people aren't happy. They say they're not getting their Melbourne morning papers as early as they were, and they feel that the removal of the trike might lead to the line being closed. The track ending at Coolanong once extended 6 miles farther, but that section was closed 15 years ago. The rail motor stopped 10 minutes at Coolanong before heading back to Piangle. Bill Roberts can remember having to shovel drifting sand from the line before better farming methods beat this problem, once common in the Mallee. In his 32 years as driver of the trike, Bill Roberts made 3,200 round trips, or almost 132,000 miles. Yet, after all its work, the trike still will not become a museum relic. It'll be used by railway repair gangs.
Port Pirie Station in South Australia, the start of one of the world's last great train journeys. It's the morning of Monday, November the 24th.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Australian National Railways Commission, I'd like to welcome you all here this morning on this very special occasion.
Ridiculed by its detractors, loved by its faithful, the old Ghan passenger train is about to pass into railway history. After half a century, the Ghan had attained celebrity status, and its farewell had all the emotion of a final performance. Weekend magazine reporter Grant Heading joined passengers and crew on the sentimental journey to Alice Springs.
All aboard. I do sincerely apologise.
Popularity came late to the old Ghan. Its reputation for being slow and unreliable meant it was overlooked by generations of travellers. But from the time Australian National Railways announced the imminent closure of the line, people clamoured for seats. Bookings broke all records and extra carriages were added. Suddenly it was fashionable to travel on the Ghan, and for train buffs it became a pilgrimage. Most of the 144 passengers on the last Ghan had waited 12 months to share a place in history. By the time passengers changed from the standard gauge carriages to the ageing narrow gauge coaches, the Ghan was nearly 2 hours late pulling out of Maree. If the idiosyncrasies of the Ghan fascinated ordinary travellers, they were irresistible to the buffs. One group of enthusiasts shadowed the train all the way from Port Pirie to Oodnadatta, a hot and dusty 27-hour drive. Their most important rendezvous with the Ghan was at the Algebukna Bridge spanning the Niels River. This was one of the few crossings able to withstand the floods that periodically washed away large sections of track and contributed to an annual maintenance bill of several $1 million. Shimmering in the heat of the Gibber Plain, the Edwards Creek water towers provided much-needed replenishment to the carriage's tanks. For the exhausted Ghan chasers, it was time to observe the train at close quarters. Michael Kohler and Graham Quayle are both from Adelaide.
We're interested in filming as many aspects of the Ghan as we can, like the people, the scenery, the train itself, and some of the old sidings which are no longer in use. And
well, what does the passing of the Ghan mean to you?
Well, it's certainly nearly 100 years of history. It's one of the last remaining trains in the world which carry so much nostalgia. And I think it's a pity, but as the new line is now going to prove, which I'm sure that it's absolutely inevitable that this just has to go, you know. So,
could people regard you as rail cranks?
In some areas, some people do, but it's just like any other hobby. This sort of hobby, no, I would never come up to this part of the world, especially in this heat, but this has brought me up here. So I've been around the world, fortunately. I've seen trains all over the world, so no, I think it's a very good, healthy hobby.
And the GAN is something special?
Oh, yes,
yes.
It's history, part of South Australia, going with this last one.
Explorer John McDowell Stewart, who pioneered the route through Central Australia, discovered waterholes like Edwards Creek all the way to Alice Springs. Camel teams and the Overland Telegraph followed Stewart's path. Not far behind, in the 1880s, came the railway, relying on the springs to top up the steam boilers. The Afghan camel drivers faded into obscurity, but they gave the new train an identity. The old GAN had none of the mystique or glamour of famous trains such as the Orient Express and the Trans-Siberian. It will be remembered instead as an eccentric aristocrat, pampered and enjoyed by people with time on their hands. Old-fashioned appointments and walnut-panelled carriages offered an elegance unrivalled in Australia. There was an overriding sense of adventure. Always there was the threat of the unexpected. On this trip, a breakdown in the air conditioning system. An outside temperature over 40 degrees made conditions in the cabins unpleasant. There were few complaints. Somehow, the passengers would have been disappointed if the trip had been uneventful. The old GAN was oblivious to time. It was advisable to take a calendar rather than a timetable. Oodnadatta has the dubious distinction of being perhaps the hottest place in South Australia. It's endured the heat and isolation, but it's unlikely that it can survive the loss of the GAN. The line north of Maree will be scrapped, and with it will go most of the population. Nevertheless, they put on a brave face and gave the train a rousing send-off. The GAN's contribution to exploration and settlement of the outback will never be forgotten. The old line runs like a vein of history along the edge of the Simpson Desert and through Kidman's cattle country. One man who remembers is Bill Twilley of Port Augusta, who took the first train into Alice Springs in 1929. 12 months later, the line was badly damaged by washaways. Bill Twilley says he lost count of derailments and other delays, but he recalls one trip taking 3 months.
Because it is the last GAN. I'm very sad. Especially when we went through Oodnadatta and I saw the store, the people, and I said for them this is goodbye and it will never come back. I felt sad, but I'm happy because I had the opportunity to be able to go and be on it.
Is it a lot different to other trains you've ridden on?
Much, much different. First of all, the atmosphere is different. The country is different. Because you go slower, you're more relaxed. You enjoy your surroundings. You enjoy the other people. You're taking more care, and you get so much more out of it.
The excellence of the dining room service was even more commendable under the circumstances. The large carriages which rode awkwardly on the small bogies often lurched violently over the twisted, undulating track. Ghan crews showed remarkable resilience. At best, it was a return journey of 5 16-hour days. Financially rewarding, but physically demanding. Old meets new, the merging of the narrow gauge with its shining replacement near Heavitree Gap on the outskirts of Alice Springs. Bob Nader nursed the train through its last delicate manoeuvre.
Years gone by, the Ghan meant a lot to me when I started on the job there in the steam days there. It's the goal of every fireman to learn to fire and become the senior fireman, and then he'd be the fireman on the Ghan, and that was the greatest privilege for any steam fireman to have.
As we pulled into the station, someone had the temerity to ask if we were on time. A conductor replied that to arrive on the right day was good enough for the Ghan.
In the right place?
Few people in Alice Springs will mourn the passing of the old Ghan. Its unreliability frequently left the town short of perishables, and the service was cursed by local traders. A local train preservation group is making a strong claim to retain the carriages and a short section of track as a tourist attraction.
I worked for these railways as a kid. That's a fair while ago, back in the days of steam, the days of which now just an occasional trace remains to be found and picked up. A piece of coal that must have lain around here for 15 years because it's been all that long since the steam locomotive ran here. Well, this, another trace of times gone, the water column. On a steam railway, nothing was more vital than this to give those machines their frequently needed drinks of water. My railway career began, as did most in those days, in the inglorious job of a call boy. Call boys were youths who rode their cycles around the streets of railway towns in the hours of darkness and brought to train crews the bad news of when they were needed at work. We were not the most loved of railway employees. Our next film is a story of a call boy. It's not my story. It's a young man who came much later than my time. It's also a story of the town in which he lived, Junee, in New South Wales, of the railway system he served, the main line between Sydney and Melbourne, the story of a call boy.
Station masters, railway porters, ticket men and call boys. To the passengers, faceless men in blue serge. To the town, its people.
Follow out, please.
In Juni, you leave school early, and more often than not join the railway. And you join at the bottom, like Greg Gorringe.
8 p.m. 480 to Goulburn Camp. Hardwick 5:50 p.m. 489 to Albury for 464. Ash 6:45 p.m. 424 to Goulburn Camp. And His Worship 10:59 p.m. 455 to Albury for 468.
Greg's job is to wake up Stan Ash, engine driver, and make sure that he's on the platform to take over the 6:45 to Goulburn. Officially, Greg's a junior station assistant. In railway language, a call boy.
Go, boy.
Yeah.
6:45 p.m. 416 to Goulburn. Round trip 467.
Thank you.
Well, you get the odd fella that's had a bit of a good night and he goes back off to sleep. You have to go back up there 2 or 3 times. Causes a delay to the train and then we get a bung over it.
You get a bung. What does that mean?
It's a slip from the district superintendent. Wants us to explain what happened, what time we called the guard, when we called him and when we went back to call him.
So it's really your responsibility to get that fellow on the train?
Yeah.
How do you know if he hasn't woken up?
Well, he hasn't got here on time. That's when we fly back up to their place and wake him up again.
Riding a bike is nowhere near as responsible as driving a train. But you've got to start somewhere.
Call, boy. 5:20 p.m. 418 to Goulburn and camp. I use my own bike most of the time. Railway bikes are, let's say that they should have been taken out with lace-up boots. Call, boy.
Yeah?
11 a.m. B1 to Narandra, return B2. Okay. Quite a few times their bikes are broken down. People across the road have seen it, dived into their tool shed and come out with some tools for us.
Have any accidents with dogs or milk bottles or things like that?
I have been bitten once by a dog. That dog never lived to tell the story. And,
what did you do to it?
They come down here to the station and report it, and they'll take you around to the police station. You sign forms to have the dog shot.
History, geography, mathematics. For Greg Gorringe, they run a very poor second to diesels, couplings, rolling stock, and the midnight mail. And before you pass judgment, remember Ben Chifley, engine driver to Prime Minister. The local version is Alderman engine driver Les Schultz, His Worship the Mayor of Junee. In Junee's public parks, there are no old steam trains for the kids to play on. Trains are the town's livelihood. The romance of the railways is somewhat lost in this railway town, where for much of the year smoke rises from the departmental scrapyard. Old carriages lose their usefulness, so you burn them. Junee is steeped in railway history, but it seems to shun the past. There's no railway museum. In fact, if you make too much of Junee's trains, they tend to regard you as a little eccentric. Nobody laughs outright at Signalman Arthur Robinson, just a condescending smile here and there.
Talk, eat and sleep trains. I got trains, I work trains here, I work them at home, and I got books, I got records, I collect anything to do with railways. I collect railway tickets, postcards, take lots of slides, and all this sort of thing.
And what made you be a signalman?
I liked the idea. I was shunning at Mount Victoria at the time, and thought I wanted to advance a bit further. And I thought of various jobs that I could do, and I thought to myself, well, this is the sort of work where I can sort of see what's going on as well as working the trains. So I've been doing it ever since 1958.
Why not an engine driver?
Well, it doesn't appeal to me in one respect, although I'd like to drive trains, no way at all, but being away from home all the time.
Engine drivers aren't the elite of the railway?
In some respects. Although I don't think they perhaps carry the prestige with children as they used to, as far as the old steam engine was concerned. But nevertheless, every kid still likes to see a train, whether it's a diesel or a steam engine. We watch the engine, see where we can take photos. We talk trains, of course. You might sit down for half an hour to relax and with the mates, and you'd perhaps talk about the engine that's on the train or where we are and what used to be there. We might have just passed a station that's perhaps closed now. It doesn't do any work today. Perhaps years ago it was a big depot. There's a certain amount of drama in watching the trains go past. The Glamour Express goes rushing through here in the middle of the night. Sometimes he's really flying, other nights he's not going so fast. There's a certain amount of drama, and he's coming, and next thing he's gone, he's not here. Did you hear about the Aurora last night?
Yeah, it's delayed chucked the staff between Yarranquinga and Kapuka.
Yeah, and also they, down at Albury.
Few railway enthusiasts can boast the luxury of their own railway carriage. But here, amongst plastic passengers and plaster scenery, Arthur Robinson sets aside reality to indulge in the complete control of his miniature railway.
Petrol? Well, it was about a 35-minute delay there, and then they got up, because they got up to Uranquiddy and dropped the staff.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got going, it was about a 75-minute delay.
75, hell.
You should have seen him go through Germany.
No wonder I didn't hear it.
You stopped at Passenger?
Yeah, you just stopped it. I might get the little silver engine of mine later on and pick up the crane and do a bit of maintenance around the track.
Yeah, we can run a train around there. Even put a couple of little four-wheelers on it. There we go.
Yeah. Bellwood. 6:10 a.m, 29 to the Rock, special to Belfraden, return home passenger 16. Righto.
Trains haven't changed much in the past 100 years, nor have the people who drive them. Cool boy to station master, a man could do a lot worse.
That's the shape of railways today. Fast, clean, comfortable. The XPT of the Railways of New South Wales, one of the factors that's bringing people back to trains. Some of us, of course, never left them. These things, these XPTs, are becoming a transport institution in Australia. And as new institutions are established, old ones die. For example, the Southern Aurora, that spectacular train of stainless steel that began running in 1962 between Sydney and Melbourne, using first the new standard gauge track linking our two major cities. Here's how ABC Television News saw the final run of the Southern Aurora, and then we've filmed from 1962 of its first run, and some pictures of how they built that standard gauge line.
If there were mixed feelings among train buffs, waiting to record the end of an era, it was a shame they had to wait so long for it to happen. But then, in Victoria, delays are as traditional as the old trains themselves. When the Southern Aurora finally chugged in, some passengers had no sense of occasion.
We didn't even know it was the last trip.
I didn't even know about it. It was good. Well, we didn't know till we read it in the paper last night, so it was rather surprised, actually, that we were on the last one.
What do you think about it finishing up?
Oh, disappointing, really. But, well, that's the way it goes, isn't it?
Disappointing it may be, but the Southern Aurora hasn't always given an easy ride. In 1969, there was tragedy when it ploughed into a goods train at Violet Town, north of Melbourne, killing 9 and leaving 100 people injured. Contrast the launch in 1937 of the Spirit of Progress, Australia's first air-conditioned train, reaching unheard-of speeds of 80 miles an hour. Here's the Spirit of Progress today. And here's its replacement, the Sydney Express. If they look the same, well, they are, almost. The new Express will comprise a combination of carriages from the Spirit and Southern Aurora. It should run until the high-speed XPT trains take over in about 3 years' time.
The station is never quiet, day or night. Each week, hundreds of thousands of travellers come to Sydney's Central Station. Passengers catching electric trains alone total 93,000 on a normal working day. But long-distance travellers also know Central well. Daily, 150 country and interstate trains pull into and leave these platforms. Many of the trains travel southwards, towards the border of New South Wales and Victoria. But for many years, that's where they've stopped. Trains such as the Sydney-Melbourne Daylight Express have gone no further than the border. Their terminus, Albury. To many people, the name Albury means simply a place to change trains. But it's soon to lose this identity. For almost 80 years, a difference in the rail gauge between New South Wales and Victoria has forced people to change trains here. Early next year, a through service will begin. The line is being standardized. Many a soldier has passed through Albury, especially during the war years. All goods and luggage have to be unloaded, then loaded again at Albury. But soon, it will be just a wayside halt. Much business will be lost by the railway's restaurant. Ever since 1857, attempts have been made to standardize the rail gauge in Australian states. Now Melbourne, New South Wales and Brisbane are being linked, and the worry of changing trains will be eliminated. South of the border, the trains will soon travel on lines which are the same gauge as New South Wales, 4 feet 8.5 inches. Work is nearly completed, with 4.5 miles to go. The Spirit of Progress will be the first passenger train to run from Melbourne to Sydney in April. More than 1,000 men have been building the standard gauge line. Work on the standardization of about 190 miles from Albury to Melbourne began in 1958. A joint venture of the two state governments, it's expected to cost more than £14 million. Here the men are straightening crowbars, bent by the strain of hard work in the sun. "27,000 tons of rails, 500,000 sleepers, and millions of tons of filling are being used. Many migrants are among the workers. This gang working at Seymour, 60 miles north of Melbourne, includes men from Greece and also some like Bernd Pichakoba from Germany. Aged 21, he comes from Berlin. New S-Class locomotives will be used. This one was helping to consolidate the track on a new stretch. The new line generally follows the existing broader gauge track from Wodonga, near the border, to Broadmeadows, Melbourne. After April next year, 3 air-conditioned services will run each way between Sydney and Melbourne daily. Spencer Street Station, in the heart of Melbourne, will be the terminal for the standard gauge passenger service. 2 new luxury sleeper trains are being built at a cost of £1 million. Some Victorian rolling stock is also being converted. At 11 a.m. on January the 3rd, the first train to use the new line, a fast goods, will reach Melbourne. At first, they'll travel at restricted speeds to consolidate the line. But by April the 1st, passenger trains should be reaching speeds of up to 80 miles an hour. Melbourne to Sydney in 13 hours. Here at Spencer Street, they're working on a new terminal building. The modern terminal will have a platform 1,300 feet long, an underground tunnel for parcels and luggage, and a cafeteria. From Melbourne through New South Wales to Brisbane. After 80 years, a standard gauge, 4 feet 8.5 inches. The name Southern Aurora had been kept secret until the Governor-General, Viscount de Lisle, announced it at a dinner before the train journey. It was a glittering occasion. Among the passengers was Lady de Lisle, wife of the Governor-General, and Miss Catherine Sidney, their daughter. The Premier, Mr. Hepburn. Others represented the Victorian and the Commonwealth governments, which had all contributed to the construction of the standard gauge railway. Here's Mr. Calwell, the federal opposition leader. The Prime Minister, Mr. Menzies, at the start of this epic journey. This wouldn't have been such an historic journey, but for the stubbornness of the railway planners a little more than a century ago. New South Wales chose one gauge, Victoria went on with the broad gauge. And only last night, there was the first passenger train direct from Sydney to Melbourne. A train of glittering stainless steel. A train to be known as the Southern Aurora. And now aboard the train, described as one of the most modern and comfortable in the world. 150 guests were aboard the train, which was climaxing the years of muddle over railway gauges. Rolling through Albury Station, where passengers and freight have had delays of many hours waiting for connecting services to Melbourne. Into Victoria, and then on to Wodonga, the first main centre on the new standard gauge line. The Aurora burst through ribbons strung across the line, just 9.5 hours after leaving Sydney. Ahead was about 190 miles of track, 4 feet 8.5 inches wide. The Aurora was built specially for the new line. Modern dining cars with the latest in services are available to the traveller. Travelling at speeds up to 80 miles an hour, passengers have every comfort. A pull-down bunk is a feature of the sleeping car. At stations and homesteads, crowds lined the track to see the train pass by. It was on the final leg of the 600-mile journey. Its stainless steel bodywork gleaming, the Southern Aurora was on time for the entire run. The £14 million project is almost completed. Now there's a direct rail link between Brisbane and Melbourne.
The Indian Pacific departs Sydney Terminal, number 1 platform, Perth bound. 2 days and 3 nights across the continent. While ever that thing runs, the drama, the romance, the sheer glamour of railways lives on. A few years ago, when that train was newer, I did that trip and I made a film about it. I'd like to show it to you.
GM 15 O&E FIVE, GM 18 O&E EIGH2.
Halfway across Australia, from a phone box on the edge of the Nullarbor, a locomotive driver talks to a controller 600 miles away. He seeks a clear track for the next stage of that once impossible journey, one train across Australia. This train has come 1,500 miles. It has 1,000 miles ahead of it. The railway systems of Australia, which for 100 years couldn't even agree how wide apart their rails should be, cooperate now to provide 3 times a week one of the few epic train journeys left in the world. While this train rolls across the southern edge of the Great Victoria Desert, a second exactly similar train is heading east from Perth, and at Central Station in Sydney, a third is made ready to move.
Attention, number 1 platform. Ladies and gentlemen, the Indian Pacific Express, now standing at number 1 platform, is due to depart at 3:15 p.m. and will convey sleeping berth passengers to Broken Hill, South Australia and Western Australian stations.
Nearly 180 people will make this trip. 150 of them paying passengers. The others are crew. Cooks, kitchen men, conductors, stewards, mechanics to watch and service air conditioning and electricals. The train's kitchen will prepare and serve 1,200 meals. Very little is pre-cooked. And aboard go 30 pounds of bacon, 180 pounds of sirloin steak and 80 pounds of fillet, 100 pounds of fish, box after box of beer, whiskey and wine and gin, headache powders, indigestion remedies. This must be one of the few passenger trains in Australia that runs at a profit. It came onto the scene in 1970, when most of the once great trains of the world had run their last, when their cars had been sold to the wreckers and their menus and monogram cutlery were valued only by collectors of train lore. The Indian Pacific was planned as a gesture, a symbol of the coast-to-coast standard gauge. But then it began making money. A small profit, true, and smaller still when shared between the 4 railway systems which cooperate to run it. The Indian Pacific has cashed in on several markets. People who like trains, people who want to see Australia at ground level, and people who can afford the time to avoid the herding procedures which have become part of travelling by air. There are no baggage searches at Central Station, no queues for seat endorsement, no constant bellowing from loudspeakers. Ironically, a train like the Indian Pacific has recaptured the elegance the airlines once offered, and travellers are prepared to wait months for bookings.
Attention, number 1 platform. Ladies and gentlemen, the Indian Pacific Express is now due to depart. Stand clear of the train, please.
Okay, with number 1, the Indian Pacific.
Overnight, the Indian covers 500 miles, changes locomotives once, engine crews twice. For the sleepless, there's been a procession of stations and sidings with names that sound like the train passing over points. Manildra, Kukamidjara, Yarranbandi, Gunabang, Ubalong, Matakana. As the third sitting arises from breakfast, there is Broken Hill. Ahead, the road is new and flat and fast through the mid-north of South Australia, the old route of the Silverton Tramway and to Port Pirie. This isn't part of the ordinary service. It's a promotion gimmick, organized by the tea and tourist industries of India. It's all a very long way from a railway pie and coffee at those infamous refreshment rooms of long ago, Moss Vale and Golden, Junee and Albury. A 20-minute stop, a 100-long queue, and 2 hours of indigestion to follow.
I really do hope I will.
You still eat in a hurry. There are 4 sittings for each meal, but there is elegance in this mile-a-minute restaurant. The elegance of heavy silver, polished and gleaming, of service better than many restaurants and far ahead of ocean liners. The airlines simply couldn't compete. There's not a plastic dish in sight, nor a drop of congealed gravy.
Three beef of each. And one more. One more, Liam. Let's see.
What did you say?
What we had before.
One catering crew works the Indian from Sydney to a rail siding in South Australia called Gladstone. The train waits there and meets a Sydney-bound train for an exchange of crews. Not only the people change. From here to Kalgoorlie, the Indian Pacific is operated by crews of the Commonwealth Railways. They work to different rules, one of which is not to fraternize with the passengers. So the spirit the Sydney crew has helped to create aboard ends at Gladstone. The entrepreneurial instinct of stewards and waiters is gone.
No worries, mate. Should be all right.
Waiting at Port Pirie is a second train, the Transcontinental. The two trains join and travel on as one, 26 cars long, towards the desert. The 1,000-mile track across the desert was at first a political promise, a bait to lure Western Australia into the Federation. But it was 12 years before the navvies came and 5 years more before the trains ran from Port Augusta to Kalgoorlie. This film was made more than half a century ago.
Good morning.
Cup of tea, sir.
Thank you very much.
Morning, madam. How are you this morning? Cup of tea.
Thank you.
Have a nice rest, did you?
Very nice.
Very good then.
Right on
And your
time
breakfast?
too.
Yes, and your breakfast will be around about quarter to 8, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good.
Thank you.
This year, the Nullarbor is green. It's been a wet year. But when they built this track and ran it with steam engines, there was never enough water. On the Indian Pacific, there is water, hot and cold, and even soda. The men who worked here on track-laying gangs used to get a bucket of water a week to wash in. To drink, they had a rough local beer and sly grog of appalling recipe. Navvy's nightmare, it was called. Some of them died of it. Or they died of fever, or were driven to madness by flies and heat and monotony. But they laid track faster than anyone had done before, 1,000 miles in 1,000 days. This is their monument, the track and the occasional line-side settlements, whose names offer dubious immortality to long-dead politicians. On the passing siding at Hague, at the end of the long straight, 300 miles without a bend in the track, there's a passing contact with the eastbound Indian Pacific. Then on again, into featureless plain. When the railway builders came here, there were no survey marks, no points of reference. And like men at sea, the surveyors used the stars to point the way of the track. When they came together, the track layers from the east and the gangs from the west, their error was only 3 feet. Perth, in the early morning of the 3rd day, rain streams off the stainless steel and washes away the red dust of the desert crossing. The Indian is on time. 66 hours, 2,500 miles from Sydney. Today it will be washed and swept, provisioned, beds made, fueled and watered and wheel tapped. And tonight, it will be off again.